A Terrible Vengeance, Chapter 6, Found Drowned. After such a dreadful experience, it might have been imagined that Mr. Murray would be very ill indeed, but what we expected rarely came to pass, and though during the whole of Sunday and Monday Davis felt, as he expressed the matter, awfully shaky, his master appeared well in fair spirits. He went to the cathedral, and no attendant footsteps dogged him. On Monday he accompanied his grandmother to Lonsdale Court, where he behaved so admirably as to please even the lady on whose favour his income depended. He removed to a furnished house Mrs. Murray had taken, and prepared to carry out her wishes. Day succeeded day, and night into night. But neither day nor night did Davis hear the sound of any ghostly voices or trace of the print of the phantom foot. Could it be that nothing more was to come of it? That the mystery was never to be elucidated, but fade away as the marks of the dainty feet had vanished from the floor, pavement, steps, and even the platform? The valet did not believe it. Behind those signs made by nothing human lay some secret well worth knowing, but it had never been possible to know much about Mr. Murray. He was so little of a gentleman that he had no pleasant, careless ways. He did not leave his letters lying loose for all the world to read. He did not tear up papers and toss them into a waste-paper basket. He had the nasty practice of locking up and burning, and though it was Mr. Davis's commendable custom to collect and preserve unconsidered odds and ends as his master occasionally left in pockets, these, after all, were simply trifles light as air. Nevertheless, as a straw shows how the wind blows, so that chance remark anent of Chertsey Station, made by Gage, promised to provide a string on which to thread various little beads in Davis's possession. The man took them out and looked at them. A woman's full white tulle, with black spots, seemingly strong of Tabasco smoke and musk, a receipt for a bracelet, purchased from some obscure jeweller, a Chertsey lock ticket, and the return half of a first-class ticket from Shipperton to Waterloo, stamped with the date of the day before they left London. At these treasures Davis looked long and quite earnestly. "We shall see," he remarked as he put them up again. "There, I think, the scent lies hot." It could not escape the notice of so astute a servant that his master was unduly anxious for a sight of London papers, and that he glanced through them eagerly for something he apparently failed to find. More, that he always laid the print aside with some sigh of relief. Politics did not seem to trouble him, or any sort of public burning question. "He has some burning question of his own," thought the valet, though he mentally phrased his notion in quite different words. Matters went on thus for a whole week. The doctor came and went and wrote prescriptions, for Mr. Murray was still ailing, or he chose to appear so. Davis caught a word or two which had references to the patient's heart, and some sort of shock. Then he considered that awful night, and wondered how he, who was in sober senses and wide awake and staring, had lived through it all. "My heart and many good other things will have to be considered," he said to himself. "No wages could pay for what has been put upon me this week past. I wonder what I ought to speak to Mr. Murray now." Undecided on this point, he was still considering it when he called his master on the following Sunday morning. The first glance at the stained and polished decided him. Literally, it was interlaced with footprints. The man's hand shook as he drew up the blind, and he kept his eyes turned on Mr. Murray while he waited for orders. Walked out of the room when dismissed as though such marks had been matters of customary occurrence in some 19th-century bedroom. No bell summoned him back on this occasion. Instead of asking information, Mr. Murray dropped into a chair and nerved himself to defy the inevitable. Once again there came a pause. For 3 days nothing occurred, but on the 4th a newspaper and letter arrived, both of which Davis inspected quite curiously. They were addressed in a small Mr. Saville's handwriting, and they bore the postmark Shepperton. The newspaper was enclosed in an ungummed wrapper, tied around with a piece of string. After a moment's reflection, Davis cut the string, spread out the print, and held a column marked atop with 3 blue crosses, containing the account of an inquest held at King's Head on a body found on the previous Sunday morning, close by Tumbling Bay. It was that of a young lady who had been missing since the previous Friday week, and could only be identified by the clothes. Her mother, who in giving evidence frequently broke down, told how her daughter on the evening in question went for a walk, and never returned. She did not wish to go because her boots were being mended, and her shoes were too large. No doubt they had dropped off. She had very small feet, and it was not always possible to get shoes to fit them. She was engaged to be married to the gentleman with whom she went out. He told her they had quarrelled, and she did not believe he could see anything to do with her child's death, but she did not know what to think. It had been said her girl was keeping company with somebody else, but that could not be true. Her girl was a good girl. Yes, she had found bracelets hidden away among the girl's clothes, and she could not say the boy he saw got the 7 gold sovereigns that were in her purse, or the locket taken off the body. But her girl was a good girl, and she did not know whatever she could do without her, for Lucy was all she had. Walter Grantley was next examined, after being warned that anything he said might be used against him. Though evidently much affected, he gave his evidence in a clear and straightforward manner. He was a clerk in the War Office. He had, against the wishes of all of his friends, engaged himself to the deceased, who, after having some time professed much affection, had latterly treated him with great coldness, and on the evening in question, she reluctantly came out with him for a walk. But after they passed the ship, she insisted he should take a boat. They turned and got onto the boat. He wanted to go down the river, because there was no lock before Surbury, but she declared if he would not row her up the river, she would simply go home. They went up the river, quarrelling all the way, and there had been so much of this sort of thing that after they passed through Shepperton Lock, he tried to bring matters to a conclusion, and asked her to name a day for their marriage. She scoffed at him, and asked if he thought she meant to marry a man on such a trumpery salary. Then she insisted he should land her, and after a good deal of argument he did land her, and rode back alone to Halliford. After that he knew no more. Richard Saville deposed he took a boat at Laurie Halford directly after the last witness, with whom he was not acquainted, and rode up towards Chertsey, passing Mr. Grantley and Mrs. Heath, who were evidently quarrelling, and went as far as Dumsey Deep, where, finding the stream most heavily against him, he turned, and on his way back saw the young lady walking slowly along the bank. At Shepperton Lock he and Mr. Grantley exchanged a few words, and rode down on Halliford almost side by side. They bade each other good evening, and Mr. Grantley walked off in the direction of Alton, where it was proved by many other witnesses he arrived at 8 o'clock, and did not go out until 10, when he went into bed. All efforts to trace what had become of the unfortunate girl proved quite unavailing, till a young man named Lemson discovered the body on the previous Sunday morning, close by Tumbling Bay. The coroner wished to enjoin the inquest, in hopes some further light might be thrown on some mysterious occurrence, but the jury protested so strongly against any proceeding of the sort that they were directed to return an open verdict. No one could dispute the girl had been found drowned, or that there was no evidence to explain how she came to be drowned. But at the close of the proceedings, said the local paper, an affecting incident occurred. The mother wished the £7 to be given to the man who brought her child home, but the man refused to accept a penny. The mother said she would never touch it, when a relation stepped forward and offered to take charge of it for her. The local paper contained also a leader on the tragedy, in the course of which remarked how exceedingly fortunate it was that Mr. Saville chanced to be staying at the Ship Hotel, so well known to boating men, and that he happened to go up the river and see the poor young lady after Mr. Grantley left her, as otherwise the latter gentleman might have found himself in a most unpleasant position. He was much to be pitied, and the leader writer felt confident that every one who read the evidence would sympathize with him. It was evident the inquiry had failed to solve the mystery connected with Miss Heath's untimely fate, but it was still composed to pursue the matter of any fresh facts transpired. "I must get to know more about this," thought Davis, as they refolded and slowly tied up the paper.